The neon lights of Sector Five's bustling marketplace illuminated a ragged figure stumbling through the crowd. He was a human, an oddity in this part of the galaxy, where most locals had never seen one outside of a vidscreen. He was covered in dust from a recent mining expedition on Kthrak Prime. His pockets, unfortunately, were just as empty as his stomach. His name was Max, a former space trader turned wanderer after his ship had been commandeered by a band of Krolorian pirates. Now, without a credit to his name, Max needed a place to stay, just for a while, until he could figure out his next move. He wandered through the dimly lit alleys until he came across a flickering sign that read rooms for rent in several alien languages. The building was a dilapidated, three-story structure wedged between a noodle stall and a tech salvage shop. He sighed, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. The lobby was cramped, filled with strange plants and odd knickknacks. Behind a cluttered desk sat the landlady, an alien who looked unlike any Max had ever seen. She had a tall, lean frame with skin that shimmered a soft shade of turquoise. Her eyes were large and expressive, like polished black gems. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice a musical hum that resonated in the small room. I need a room," Max said, scratching the back of his neck. "But, I'm kind of short on credits right now. I can work, though, fix things, clean, whatever you need." The alien studied him for a moment, tapping a slender finger against her chin. Then she stood up, towering over him, and walked around the desk. "I am Zelara," she said, offering a hand. Max shook it, surprised by the firm grip. "You look like you've been through the grinder." "Yeah, something like that," Max replied with a weak smile. Zelara eyed him up and down, her gaze sharp but not unkind. "I don't usually take in tenants who can't pay up front," she said, "but I've been needing someone to help with repairs around here. If you can prove useful, we might work something out." Max exhaled in relief. "Thank you. You won't regret it." The next few weeks passed in a blur. Max fixed broken light panels, patched leaking pipes, and even repaired the old heating unit that had been malfunctioning for years. The building, filled with a mix of alien tenants, started to feel less like a temporary shelter and more like a community. And Max found himself talking to Zelara more and more. They often sat together in the evenings, sharing stories. Max told her about his travels, the places he had seen, and the dangers he had faced. Zelara, in turn, spoke of her people, the Kflani, a once prosperous race known for their trade and craftsmanship, now scattered across the galaxy after a devastating war. She had lost her husband during the conflict, a sorrow that lingered in her voice whenever she spoke of it. One evening, as they sipped on a shared bottle of Sfurl, a sweet alien liquor, Max found himself asking a question that had been on his mind for days. "Zelara, why do you stay here? In this rundown building, on this forgotten part of the planet?" Zelara took a slow sip, her eyes distant. "It's quiet here. After the war, I wanted a place where I could build something small, something my own. I could have left, found another partner, another life. But I chose this. I like taking care of people who don't have anyone else. And besides," she added with a small smile, "someone has to look after this place, keep it from falling apart." Max nodded. He understood that feeling all too well. They sat in silence for a while, the comfortable kind, the kind that said more than words ever could. As weeks turned into months, Max became a fixture in the building. He found ways to earn some credits by fixing things for the neighbors or helping at the noodle stall next door. But he never saved much. Most of it went towards buying small gifts for the tenants or fresh ingredients for shared dinners with Zelara. One night, as they were closing up the common area, a pair of unfamiliar figures pushed through the door. They were Krelorians, rough-looking and armed. Max tensed, recognizing the species immediately. He had a history with their kind, none of it good. "Zelara," one of them snarled, "we need to talk about your debt." Zalara's face hardened. "I paid you last month. You can't keep raising the interest every time you feel like it." The larger Krolorian sneered. "We can do whatever we want. This is our turf, and you pay to stay." Max stepped forward. "Hey, back off. She's done nothing wrong." The Krolorian turned to him, eyeing him up and down. "And who's this? Another stray you've taken in?" Max clenched his fists. He could feel the anger boiling up inside him. He had no money, no weapons, but he'd be damned if he let them hurt Zelara. "Get out," Zelara said firmly. "Or I call the patrols." The thugs hesitated, then growled. "This isn't over," the leader spat, turning and shoving the door open as they left. Max turned to Zelara. "What was that about?" Zelara sighed, looking more tired than he'd ever seen her. "They've been harassing me for years. Protection money, they call it, but it's just extortion. They keep raising the rates. I've been struggling to keep up." Max felt a surge of guilt. He'd been freeloading off her kindness for months. "Zelara, I'm sorry. I didn't know." Zelara gave him a sad smile. "It's not your fault, Max. This place, it's just how things are out here." Max nodded, but inside he made a decision. The next morning, Max left early. He spent the day tracking down old contacts, gathering whatever credits he could. By evening, he had a small stack of currency chips and a plan. He found the Krolorians in a dingy bar near the docks. He slapped the credits onto the table in front of them. "This is for Zelara. You leave her alone from now on." The Krelorian leader looked at the credits, then laughed. "This isn't even half of what she owes." Max leaned in, his voice low and cold. "It's all you're getting. You come back to her building, and it'll be the last thing you do." The Krelorian leader met his gaze, trying to read the human. After a tense moment, he shrugged. "Fine. Tell your landlady she gets a pass this month. But next time, she pays double." Max didn't reply. He turned and left, knowing it wasn't a permanent solution, but hoping it would buy them some time. When Max returned to the building, Zelara was waiting for him. He handed her the few remaining credits he hadn't spent. "Max, you didn't have to do this," she said, her voice breaking. "I wanted to," he replied. "You've done so much for me. It's the least I could do." Zelara stepped forward, placing a hand on his cheek. "You're a good man, Max. Maybe too good for this galaxy." He smiled, placing his hand over hers. "Maybe, but I'm exactly where I want to be." For the first time in a long while, I didn't need to say anything more. In the silent, shared space between them, they both knew they had found something they had lost, a home. And perhaps, even in this forgotten corner of the universe, a new beginning.